Welcome to the D-Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the D-Shift podcast. And I am so glad that you are here today. And I think you're going to be glad that you're here today too, because I have a wonderful guest. Alana Sharps is the founder of the SurThrive Tribe, which I think is a really cool name. I love that. She carries a wealth of experience as a high conflict divorce and child custody consultant. And she is also a best-selling author. Alana is going to talk about her expertise that extends well beyond her professional achievements. And she has actually gone through the complexities of a toxic marriage entwined with narcissistic abuse. And she developed the skills she needed to become her own best advocate and also to help others that are facing the same situation. So, Alana, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, and I'm always so happy to introduce guests, and I think I'm very blessed to have some phenomenal guests, but people who have come through some of these trials and tribulations that other people talk about from a more theoretical approach. It's different when you've been through them in real life. So tell us a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, about how this all came about and why you have made this your area of focus and passion in working with people.
Well, how this all came about is because I went through my own high conflict child custody battle. And when I was going through it, of course, you don't know anything about the family court system until you actually experience it. And then put high conflict on top of it, and it's an entirely new world. I felt like no one understood what I was going through. My friends and family couldn't help me because they hadn't been through the process. And I didn't think that my attorney understood all of the emotional things that were going on. I was still reliving my trauma. I had been in a narcissistic abusive relationship for 16 years. I had just gotten out of it a few months prior, and so I was still actively in my trauma and feeling traumatized. So I was utilizing my attorney as my therapist and my attorney. And I did everything wrong. Luckily for me, the outcome was good. But after the experience, I decided to educate myself on how family court operates and to become a coach to others so that they don't feel like they are alone when they're going through a similar situation.
Yes, family court is not user-friendly, and it is, I always tell clients, this is the thing that people don't understand. Attorneys are there to provide legal advice. They're not emotional support people. They don't know therapeutic techniques. They don't know coaching techniques. And a lot of attorneys really don't like the emotional side of family court. So why they're family divorce attorneys, I don't know. But that's the biggest thing I hear from attorneys is it's really hard for me to see my clients so emotional. I don't know how to deal with them.
Agreed. Yes. And that's when they hand them over to people like us, divorce coaches.
Right. And so I think something else that you said was really important is that nobody in the system seemed to understand what you were going through. Is that something you hear a lot of your clients talk about as well?
I do. And when they have the conversation with me and I say, I understand, I've been through it, it's a sense of relief that overcomes a lot of them. They actually are brought to tears in a lot of cases because they felt like they've been telling their story to so many people and no one understands. Right. So when they come to me and I say, I know, I understand, I've been through it, it's a sense of relief for them.
Yeah. And so I think that that's a really good distinction. If you are really concerned about child custody issues and things like that, having somebody who has some experience with that family court. Myself, when I went through my divorce, we did not have children. So it wasn't that wasn't the issue. But since then, I have worked with so many women that have had that experience. And I have been their advocate in the court system. And so I tell people, honestly, I've never been in your shoes, but I've walked with a lot of people and then people at least know. I would like to work with, if I was going through it, honestly, and I'm saying this as a divorce coach. I would prefer to work with somebody like you, Alana, who had actually been through it rather than somebody who just worked with people who've been through it.
Right. It's a totally different experience. You know what to expect. You know how to coach your clients on what to expect, and you can mentally prepare them, because I can go back to how I felt during that time, what I thought, what I was feeling. And so I can identify with the same feelings and thoughts that my clients are going through.
What do you think is the biggest block or obstacle that women face when they're talking to, let's talk about the legal professionals. And this isn't negative on lawyers, but let's just say a woman hires an attorney. She has a certain expectation what that experience is going to be. And then it's not. Where do you think the block comes in?
The block comes in realizing that you are not your attorney's only client. Family court moves very slow. Your attorneys have a number of other clients that they're attending to. So your case can go out as long as a year, 2, 3 years, or longer, depending on how much disruption the opposing party is bringing to the table. So I do a lot of coaching on realistic expectations, because my clients get upset when their cases are drawn out and they don't feel like their attorneys are paying them enough attention.
Right.
They don't realize that family court is a business, and their attorneys have to have a number of clients in order to sustain their business. So I have a lot of conversations about that. And then also, they don't feel that their attorney understands their feelings, because like you said, a lot of attorneys don't like to deal with the emotion. They want to stick to practicing the law because that is what their role is. And so I have to do a lot of coaching on having my clients understand that and say, if there's anything, emotional, you just need to talk something out, something happened, call me. Do not call your attorney.
Yes, because you do not bill in 6 or in 10, 6 minutes, or I have attorneys that bill in 6-minute increments. I mean, so you're going to get billed for at least 12 minutes, even for them to look at a text. I shouldn't say that. Maybe some of them would just bill for 6, but there's nothing free. Everything is billable.
That's right. That's right. And if they're anything like me, like I said, I did everything wrong. I use my attorney as my therapist. So I could sit on the phone with the attorney for an hour just airing my feelings. And my attorney would let me do that.
Yeah. And you know what? I had a really good attorney. Now, this was 30 years ago, but I had a really good attorney. When the first time I met him, the last thing he said after I gave him the retainer was, he said, if you have any problems, you call me. And stupid me didn't realize what that meant until I got my first bill. And, the line items, I'm looking at this, I'm going, I can't. And this was before text or even emails, like everybody just kind of phoned. So it was, everything, every piece of communication is going to be a billable something.
That is correct. Yes. Yeah. Every piece of communication. Yes. A lot of clients don't understand that they bill for email.
Yes.
So I tell them, I say, if you have a list of questions, prepare them for the week and send one email. Do not keep sending an email every day or multiple emails a day, because you're constantly getting billed for all of those emails.
And, I have to say, I work with quite a number of attorneys who are really good at this. And they will, in the first, month, they will realize they've got a client that needs a lot of personalized attention. And they will sit the client down and say, look, I'm your highest paid person. I've got somebody that you can work with. Here's a divorce coach. They can deal with all this stuff. And if it's a legal question, they'll tell you to get in touch with me. And so there are some really ethical attorneys that do that. Unfortunately, that's not always the case, right?
Correct. Yes.
So I know one of the things that you really work with your clients on is not to be the victim of the divorce process. And can you talk a little bit about what that is and why that's important?
Yes. Well, why it's important is because they are in a marathon. And that's one of the first things I tell my clients up front. This is not going to be a quick process. And even after you get a settlement agreement, just because of the sheer people that you are dealing with, they will continue to pull you back through the legal system multiple times. So you can have an agreement in place and then you can get something else filed against you later on, just so that that person, that opposing party, can maintain control over you. Because survivors of abuse, it's a control tactic that's constantly being used against them. So I work with them on building their self-esteem, the importance of self-care, and also having a therapist. And I always recommend a trauma therapist because, again, as survivors of abuse, you're probably experiencing trauma. So I highly recommend them finding a trauma therapist as a part of the team as well.
That's really excellent advice. And you're so right about, the research that talks about the post-traumatic stress disorder that so many women or men who have been in abusive relationships may experience for years. And you're right. The way the family court is set up, every frivolous cases just are right, left, and center every time you turn around. And what about do you ever see a lot of your clients where there's a real financial imbalance and, the person with the most money can keep dragging you back to court? Is that something you experience?
I do. Financial abuse and legal abuse.
Right.
Yeah. A lot of times, stay-at-home moms that have left the relationship, the opposing party will withhold funds. So they're not getting post-separation support until their divorce is finalized, and they have to fight for that. Or the person that makes more money, the opposing party, is continuing to drag them through the legal system, running up their financial bills. In some instances, running them down to the point that they can barely live off of the money that they have left.
Right. And, it's funny because I think some of the family courts and some of the legal abuse advocacy groups that are out there now are really starting to ramp up to provide education to judges, attorneys, CASA, guardian ad litems, like you name it, the whole kind of divorce community, to say these are the signs of this legal abuse and what's going on. And I was just reading an article where a judge had actually gone after, I think this woman had been to court. It was either 60 or 70 times. And she was working 3 jobs just to pay her legal fees. It was crazy. And the judge went back. They finally got a judge that had, kind of was willing to go back and look at this. She got all of her legal fees, over those 60 appearances. She got not all of them, but a large percentage of them in a lump sum order for that judge. He said, look, I see a pattern. This is what's happening. This is my judgment. And so I think a few cases like that are going to change a little bit about how this is done.
I hope so. Because I've seen a lot of women have to go pro se because they simply can't afford attorneys anymore.
Right. And now, one of the things that you said you work with your clients on is self-esteem and building up that sense of who they are and their capabilities. Interestingly, you said pro bono, because I think or pro se, because I think a lot of groups now are supporting women in getting that legal knowledge to be able to do that.
Yes. Yep. So that they can understand the court system and educate themselves. I actually had a client. She is my biggest success story. I tell people this story all the time. She started out with attorneys and she got to the point once again where she could no longer afford the legal fees. And so she had to go pro se. And she learned the legal system. She started writing up her own documentation, went to the courthouse, got the documents she needed to file, filled them out, and found an attorney that would just review her documentation.
Right.
And so she would get the blessing from the attorney, and then she represented herself in court. She even cross-examined witnesses and won her case.
That is fantastic.
I was so proud of her because when she first came to me, every conversation we had, she was in tears. She didn't understand what was going on. She was very traumatized. So to see her go from that to the point that she could be her own attorney, cross-examine witnesses, and win her case, it was a huge transformation. I was so proud of her. I just checked in with her not too long ago. This has been 2 years since we met. And she said, Alana, I'm doing great. I got a promotion at my job and I'm engaged to be married.
Oh, wonderful. I love stories like that. A lot of that
Yes.
is the most, as a coach, you're like, all right.
Yes. I told her, I said, you are my biggest success story. I tell everybody your story.
That is so powerful. And I think, the thing is, it's an uphill climb and it's a very steep learning curve, but there is a logic to the family court system. If you get into it and you really take the time to understand what's going on.
And that's the biggest thing. Yes, take the time to understand what's going on and how it works. It's not logical. I tell people that all the time. What you think the court should care about, they don't care about because they're focused on the law and facts.
Right. And I think a little bit too, I think the whole idea of what family court is portrayed in the movies and on TV is so bizarre compared to what it really is, that people just, like you said, they just have these completely unrealistic expectations. I had a client who assumed that they were going to take like several days to hear her divorce case. I said, you're going to get 10 minutes in front of the judge and both of you are going to have to do this in 10 minutes because, they just, like you say, they just want to know the very basics, unless there's something really bizarre going on, Yeah.
Yes. And you can't go in there and say, I want 80% custody of the child because I think that my ex is going to abuse him. No one will listen to you. It's not how it works.
And there, I always think there's a good and a bad to that, because you shouldn't be able to accuse somebody of something they might do just because you've got a bad impression of them. On the other hand, abusers are very crafty and they're very secretive and they're very, nobody goes out and hits their spouse or partner in the middle of a Walmart parking lot. They do it in their own home behind closed doors where there are no witnesses. So it's so hard to know how to handle some of those situations. So you have written a book. Can you tell us a little bit about your book, please?
Yes. So my book actually started out as therapeutic journals for me. After I left my marriage, I had so much information in my head that I had to let out, that I just started writing my story from beginning to end, from when I first started dating my ex all the way up until the day that I left him. And as I started sharing my story with others, I had a lot of men and women asking me, how did I get out? And the steps that I took to heal once I got out of the relationship, because they had either been through it themselves or had a friend or family member who was currently going through it that they were trying to support.
And so when you were doing that, was that hard? Was that a hard process to write that stuff down and then share it publicly?
Very much so. I didn't realize at the time when I decided to publish my book how difficult that was going to be on me mentally, because going through the editing process, and you don't edit just one time, you go through multiple iterations of editing. So every time I had to read my story, I was re-traumatizing myself because I was reliving every instance of abuse. And I didn't expect that when I wrote the book. And so it was very difficult. It was very difficult to write, very difficult for me to edit. When we were finally done, I was relieved. But what kept me going was I knew that my story would help others. And I wanted to get it out there because at the time that I published, you didn't have a lot of people actually telling you what goes on behind closed doors. You had a lot of people touching on the surface, but they weren't saying exactly what was occurring behind closed doors of these people that are very charismatic and have the perfect image of husband, wife, parent. They're not like that behind closed doors. So I knew I had to get my story out there, and I told it very raw, detail for detail, so that people could identify with it. And a lot of people have.
And could you just give us the title of your book? Because I know that there's people that want to get it. I just talked to Alana a couple of weeks ago. We met, and I have ordered the book. It hasn't got here yet, but I'm excited to have a chance to read through it and learn more.
Yes, my book is called Was It My Fault? An Abuse Survivor's Guide to Navigating Narcissistic Red Flags.
Yeah. So, Alana, and again, if this is too personal, don't answer this question. That's fine with me. When you were looking back and writing that book, were you able to see the red flags that maybe existed like in the early stages of dating, or was that could you see those when you're looking back?
When I looked back, and it's a good thing you asked that question, because in the book, I actually put the red flags of hindsight, 2020 hindsight, things that I missed that were red flags throughout the entire relationship, even in the dating phase. I didn't realize he was love bombing me. You know, the snide comments that occurred very early on in the relationship, I didn't recognize those as the first signs of emotional abuse. And so I call those instances out in the book, and the book is in color so that you can clearly see the red flags that I missed.
Oh, that is excellent. I love that idea. You know, I have a friend who went through a horrific narcissistic relationship that everybody thought he was a great guy. Like, and she never said anything to anybody because, you know, maintaining his image was so important that nobody ever talked about it. But one of the things she did say to me is she said, I should have known, like on our very first date, because he didn't want anybody ever dating with us. We did everything by ourselves, and I was forced to choose between my friends and him. And if I chose my friends, it was mental torture because he wouldn't return my calls. You know, he wouldn't meet with me. He wouldn't. And she said within a month, she thought of dating him. She was so dependent on him emotionally that she said, I can't even believe that was me.
Right. You become a totally different person, and you don't realize what's going on because all of the changes that you're making are subtle. By the time I got to the end of my marriage, I did not recognize the person that I was. I was a completely different person because I had completely molded myself to be who I thought my ex wanted me to be. But what you don't realize is that every time you change something about yourself, the bar of acceptance got higher and higher, because they are never satisfied. And you run yourself ragged and crazy trying to satisfy them, and you never can.
Yeah. And it's that intermittent reward that they give you. Like you say, that love bombing, or you make a change and you get positive recognition, and then you keep craving it. So you make more and more and more changes, right? And it's so manipulative, and they do know what they're doing.
Yes, they know exactly what they're doing.
Right.
Yes. Because when the manipulation tactics stopped working on me, my ex didn't know what to do. The night I told him I was leaving the marriage, and I could recognize things at this point, I saw him flip through 4 different masks during that time. It was so unbelievable. He went from being calm to being caring to being angry to being irate, all in a matter of seconds, because none of the masks were working on me. And so he just flipped through all of them very fast just to see what would work. And none of them worked. And it just irritated him.
And that's what, in my research and in working with a lot of the women that I have, is that seems to be the tipping point in the relationship. When the person that is being targeted by the narcissist is able to not respond in that same pattern, the narcissist doesn't know what else to do. Like they'll run through their repertoire, and then if nothing is working, they're lost. They don't know what else to do. Yeah.
That is exactly right.
And that's where I just can imagine what a valuable resource you are for your clients to be able to say, and this is how to manage this. I think
that's exactly fantastic. Right.
Yeah.
And I tell them what is going to happen prior to it happening. And it always surprises them because they say, Alana, you were right. He did exactly what you said he would do. It's like, yes, surprisingly, they all follow the same playbook. And I just learned what the playbook is.
Right. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing, right? I mean, narcissists, just like people, whether you want to say codependent or whatever, but it's a pattern, it's a dance. And if once somebody stops dancing the dance, the whole thing just crashes to the floor. There's no way it can continue. But it takes a lot of courage. Let's give every woman or every man who has been in this relationship who has made that step and stood up, that took a lot of guts and courage to do that.
It did. It took me 7 times to leave my marriage. 7 times until I finally was able to mentally pull myself out of it. And I don't even want to give myself that credit that I was able to pull myself out, because it was actually my children. I saw my son get hurt right in front of me by my ex, and that's when the light bulb went off. And I told myself, okay, this is not safe for my children. Now I have to get out. But I was willing to sacrifice my own mental health to keep my marriage together for my kids, not realizing that my kids were being abused right along with me.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to disagree with you respectfully. I think it took a lot of courage for you to do that, because there are lots of people in your shoes that don't even try to leave once, let alone to go through it 7 times. And then finally, you have to build up momentum for these things. These are huge life decisions. So, Alana, you have shared so much, and I just want to keep talking with you about this and finding out more. But what do you think of all the things that we've discussed? What do you think is the most important that women or men that are in these relationships need to think about and focus on?
Focus on rebuilding your mental strength. Self-care is so important. I cannot stress that enough. And trauma therapy, because you are your biggest supporter. And if you're a parent, you need the strength in order to be a parent as well. Your kids cannot do anything without you. They're relying on you. The second thing is, your current circumstances do not dictate your future. If you make the decision to heal, to do better, to rebuild your self-esteem and self-confidence, you can have the life that you've always dreamed of. But you have to make the decision to heal and rebuild your life.
Love that message. Thank you. Alana, if people want to reach out and find out more about what you do or work with you as a coach, what's the best way to do that?
The best way is to find me on my website, which is SurThriveTribe.com. I'm also on all social media channels. Or and I will email me as well. Sorry, at Alana@SurThriveTribe.com.
And I'm sorry, I was jumping in to say I'll make sure all of that stuff gets in the show notes at the bottom. Alana, thank you so much. I mean, this has been totally inspirational, completely inspirational, and plus you gave some really good practical tips and sharing your story. I know that's helping people that are listening and maybe going, gosh, Alana did it. I think maybe I can do it too. So thank you for all you do, Alana.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for listening in to another episode of The D Shift. And don't forget to tune in again next week. Thanks for listening and supporting the D Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.